Hey everyone, Robin Openshaw here. I want to talk about 20 labs that you should question. I've become really deeply concerned about the labs industry. Have you ever noticed how there are more and more of them, and the lab results lead millions of people straight to the pharmacy? Modern medicine has become obsessed with lab tests, not just for diagnosing disease, but for creating new conditions that feed a trillion-dollar pharmacy industry. So some of these tests were developed not because they saved lives, but because they sold drugs. Welcome to the era of disease mongering by lab work. It's a brilliant marketing ploy because all you have to do is tell someone that they have a lab value that's too high or low, and the vast majority of people will sign up for hundreds or thousands of dollars worth of further testing or treatment, even if they can't afford it and it means going into debt. They're quickly and easily convinced that something is wrong with them. But your labs can vary widely for an almost uncountable variety of reasons. Within a day, they can range, within a week. And what's the healthy range for you might be different for someone else. For instance, I have had low iron my whole life. My whole family has low iron. Randomly, living in Park City, this is really my only theory, is that I moved to 8,000 feet above sea level. My labs for iron were suddenly very high, but just a few times, and then moved to Florida and they came down to normal low baseline, okay, which is within what they say is normal, but it's low for normal. And actually it was still high the first year, so it actually took quite a while to adjust. I did nothing about it. Besides that, I'd go give blood, which is what my practitioner recommended, because by then I'd really started to seriously question labs in general. That doesn't mean I throw them all out, but I just ask a lot more questions and put less stock in them than most people do. So then recently I was told that I had 20 times higher CRP, which is the main inflammatory lab biomarker than is normal. So high that my practitioner told me only smokers had inflammation that high. That made no sense to me as I do not smoke and I play pickleball almost every day and I don't even have so much as a joint that hurts. Nothing's puffy. So I got the lab again and voila, super low inflammation like always. Even my nurse practitioner said happens all the time. So I want to run through 20 of the most controversial or overused lab tests or sort of boutique lab tests geared towards the upper middle class who love labs that too often lead healthy people down a path of unnecessary medication, fear, and long-term dependency on some drug and on getting retested annually, in some cases even more often. So let me run through these 20 labs. And since that's kind of a lot, I'm just going to tell you what the lab is, what it supposedly finds, okay? Just imagine me making air quotes, and what class of drugs it pushes, or usually some kind of synthetic supplement, and why this is a red flag at best and an outright scam at worst. So this is going to go really fast because there's a bunch of them. Number one, the DEXA bone scan. What it finds: osteopenia or osteoporosis. Until the DEXA scan was invented just 35 years ago, nobody had ever even heard of osteopenia. But never fear, there are drugs for it. It may not make sense to you that taking chemical or petrochemical drugs preserve your bone mass, and it doesn't make sense to me either. But, well, that's what we do. No one has ever even validated if the light refraction technique used in the DEXA scan even actually measures bone density. In fact, strangely, the vast majority of bone fractures occur in the top quartile of DEXA bone scans. So according to DEXA, the strongest bones are the ones breaking most often. We don't prescribe people to eat more leafy greens and do some impact exercise, even walking. I mean, my 82-year-old dad has the bone density of a 30-year-old, according to his doctor, for instance, because, that works, eating greens and actually doing some impact exercise. But what a doctor will usually tell you if you question them why they don't prescribe that is, well, we tell patients to do it and they just won't. So they drug them instead. So What is it that the DEXA bone scan pushes? Biphosphonate drugs. So Fosamax and Boniva are the most common ones. Why is it a red flag? It turns natural bone thinning of aging into a disease. Osteopenia isn't even a real pathology. It's a made-up label to prescribe drugs that can cause jaw necrosis and femur fractures. And most doctors don't know this. They believe the marketing since 1990, just like you probably do. Dentists found out accidentally that jaw necrosis or a dying jawbone is one of the effects of taking biphosphonate drugs. And femur fractures. Okay, why would your legs breaking be a common adverse event of taking bone strengthening drugs? I mean, just you don't have to think about that for more than a few seconds. An adverse event of taking a drug to strengthen your bones really shouldn't be that your jawbone dies and rots or that your leg bones break more often than others. Houston, we've got a problem. Okay, so number 2, the PSA, or the prostate specific antigen lab test. And what it supposedly finds is possible prostate cancer. What it pushes is biopsies and surgery and hormone blockers. And often, this one really upsets me because men are not told that when they undergo these procedures, most often they'll never have sex again. And why it's a red flag, the PSA test has an outrageously high false positive rate. So many men undergo life-altering procedures for slow-growing cancers that they'd never die from. The developer of the PSA test himself tried to walk it back, but too late. It was already big business. And his test is still used widely with millions of men chemically castrated, like both my father and father-in-law have been, both of them in their 80s, when the prostate cancer is highly unlikely to be the thing that kills them. Number 3, high cholesterol. What it pushes is statin drugs. Why it's a red flag? It oversimplifies a really complex system. Statins are often given based on flawed targets with little benefit in low-risk people, and in fact, potential harm, because statin drugs simply do not work. They make people feel like crap, and they do not reduce the incidence of cardiac events. Massive studies show this, even though they may create an impression of a benefit by lowering a biomarker. Okay, let's talk about number 4, hemoglobin A1C in borderline cases. What it finds is what they call prediabetes. What it pushes is gets people to go on metformin or Ozempic or the newer glucose lowering drugs. Why it's a red flag? Well, I have a bunch of problems with Ozempic, but we won't go sideways on that. But prediabetes is a slippery slope. The fix is in our diet and lifestyle, not in lifelong meds. I was told in my 20s, pregnant, and eating burgers and fries and Diet Coke every day, that I was borderline for gestational diabetes. And I changed my diet and have kept my diet healthy and have had optimal blood sugar labs ever since. So for literally 30-something years. Number 5, vitamin D testing. I'll be brief on this because I'm always talking about vitamin D testing. But what it defines is a deficiency in the vast majority of people, like literally 80% plus. What it pushes is high-dose D3 supplements or prescriptions, because they really do qualify as drugs. So more and more they're prescriptions, even by standard of care medical doctors. Why it's a red flag? Well, labs vary wildly. Deficiency cutoffs are hotly debated, and synthetic D without magnesium or K2 can create new problems, since cholecalciferol, or what they call vitamin D, isn't actually the corticosteroid hormone the body makes. And K2, the product they sell you, is actually made from coal tar. It's only similar to the nutrient in the body due to some molecules they have in common. Anyway, I've written extensively about the fraud that is vitamin D supplementation, so I'll leave this longer topic, but I'll link you to my most important articles down below so that if this is new to you, you can go deeper. If you've been taking cholecalciferol believing that you have a deficiency, please do read my articles below. Number 6, TSH only, or taking thyroid stimulating hormone labs and just calling it good at that. What it finds? They'll call it hypothyroidism. What it pushes is the drug levothyroxine. Why it's a red flag? Well, TSH alone is a very narrow lens. Millions are over or under medicated because full thyroid panels aren't run. To actually ascertain if you aren't making an adequate amount of thyroid hormone, really more tests are needed, as there are downstream and upstream precursor hormones which all play a role. I found in going to now 9 bioidentical hormone practitioners over the last 25 years, also called natural hormone replacement practitioners. That might be helpful if you're Googling them in your area, that they're all kind of winging it. There's very little standard of care nailed down. It's a young art and science, and so they're just kind of all over the map. That said, I'd still choose one of them versus regular MDs who will mostly just take the TSH test alone and potentially prescribe you inaccurately a drug that isn't even molecularly the same as the thyroid your body makes. I've found the best ones of the practitioners to be nurse practitioners who focus entirely on bioidentical hormone replacement. And I don't take the vitamin D or the fish oil that they will try to sell you. Number 7, mammograms. Okay, this is actually a screening test. It's not a lab technically, but I'm including it here anyway. What does it find? DCIS, or ductal carcinoma in situ, and benign masses. What does it push? Surgery, radiation, and fear. Why it's a red flag? Super high false positives and overdiagnosis of cancer that may never become dangerous. Most functional and integrative doctors will tell you that your body produces aberrant growths many times during your life, the vast majority of the time, also metabolizing it or breaking it down effectively so you never even knew it was there. So mammograms both cause breast cancer with their radioactive waves and also diagnose so early that stage 0 and stage 1 breast cancers, actually they don't even call stage 0 breast cancer anymore, but 10 years ago they did. Your body would have just resolved so many of those on its own, and instead they get overtreated, also putting women into a state of panic and destroying their quality of life. All right, now we're getting into some lesser known sort of boutique tests, but number 8 is the LDL particle size testing. So what it's finding is pattern B LDL is what they call it. And I don't think they know enough about it to be pushing people onto the drugs they do, but what it pushes is cholesterol meds, even beyond just statins. Why is it a red flag? Well, this is a cherry-picked lab in boutique clinics, and it's used to overtreat people at marginal risk. I don't think we really know why there's different particle sizes in LDL cholesterol. Okay, number 9. This one I kind of tend to go off a lot about too, is MTHFR and genetic SNP panels. And what they find is genetic variants of genes that we actually all have, but they don't tell you that. So people tend to take it as a diagnosis and use it to explain that, oh, my body just doesn't detoxify. Not true. What it pushes tends to be special supplements or meds. Usually it's vitamin B complex, which is not a vitamin and has no food involved in it. We'll mention that in another category in a minute. Why it's a red flag? Association is not the same thing as causation. You're not broken just because your genes aren't ideal, according to very incipient awareness of the human genome. We just don't know enough about it to be so prescriptive like functional medicine has gotten about MTHFR. So number 10, low T. Everybody knows what low T is, right? Hormone panels that tell men that they're low in testosterone, or women. So what does it find? Slight testosterone drops, which are often just normal aging. What does it push? Testosterone replacement, pellets, oral usage, creams. There's a lot of different delivery methods. Why is it a red flag? Well, it's used to sell expensive therapies that come with risks of stroke, infertility, prostate issues, and patients are usually not told of these risks. And men often think that taking testosterone is going to make them an animal at the gym or better in the sack, and generally neither is true because probably they're not low in testosterone. Plus, excessive testosterone has caused many problems, not least of which are road rage and divorce. Number 11, adrenal fatigue panels. What does it find? Cortisol dysregulation. What does it push? Hormones or supplements. Why is it a red flag? The condition isn't even recognized by conventional medicine. It's often used as a catch-all to sell supplement protocols, particularly petrochemical-based vitamin B complex. And awareness is growing that there's not really this adrenal fatigue thing. There's a more complex interplay between the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal gland. So this whole adrenal fatigue thing may have been quite the myth. Number 12, C-reactive protein or CRP. What does it find? Inflammation. What does it push? Statin drugs or anti-inflammatory drugs. Why is it a red flag? This is the one that I mentioned, being told that I had this year 20 times more CRP than I normally do or is normal or healthy. The problem with CRP is it's super nonspecific. Elevated CRP can mean that you exercised yesterday or that you have a cold. And I asked my practitioner when he told me that I had CRP levels of a smoker. I said, well, what do you think the problem is? Do I need to be tested for cancer or something? And he said, I'm not puffy anywhere. My face isn't puffy. My fingers aren't puffy. No joints hurt. Even though I play sports and work out every single day, I feel fine. And his response was, no, this is a biomarker I see lots of weird fluctuations in. So just get another test in a few months. So that's another $65 and another drive across town and taking a whole vial of blood when they really just need a drop. So I've seen so much in my research about labs that I really just don't lose any sleep over it. Okay, number 13, IgG food sensitivity panels. What does it find? It finds dozens of reactive foods. What does it push? Elimination diets and supplements. Why is it a red flag? IgG reflects exposure, not intolerance. As in, it's telling you what you ate yesterday or 2 days ago. It's not telling you what you shouldn't eat. So it often leads to unnecessary restriction and fear. 1 year, just for the sake of science, I got 3 different food sensitivity tests done, and each of them told me completely different foods that I was supposedly sensitive to. There wasn't a single overlapping food in any of those 3 tests. So that really led me to not value these tests much at all. And they aren't cheap. Okay, I'm going to skip the last 6 because this video got really long. But bottom line is, let's sum up here. Some of these labs will just naturally fluctuate daily, and one-time testing often leads to misdiagnosis and overtreatment. So we're in an environment where doctors love to prescribe labs because patients love to get them because they think it tells them the status of their health. You deserve informed consent. Your lab test should inform, not scare you into dependency. So if your lab work comes with a prescription, but no lifestyle discussion, that's a big red flag right there. If you ask me, I'll do the other 7, but I just felt this was getting a little bit longer. And thanks for following Green Smoothie Girl, and I'll see you next time.